everybody. Welcome back. It's Pickle Winners with the Cheezeman. Week 13 NFL Survivor. Can you believe we're 2/3 of the way through the season already? Man, oh man, how's it going? Did you survive last week? Take a look at what happened now in my primary pool where, I lost out, but I'm playing along still. I got beat last week. So I'm playing along still, and I took Kansas City. You can see they won. I am in some other smaller Survivor pools, and in each of those I took Tennessee. Now, if you recall, first you could see here in the big pool, this is where I'm at with everything. But in those other pools, I took Tennessee, and I would have recommended it in the big pool too, right? I would have played it that way. However, I got burned the week before taking Washington, a riskier option, right, over the Giants, and they lost. Tennessee, obviously a riskier option, even though it's Carolina. So that's why I went with Kansas City in the big pool. But, I'm going to show you something. We talk about this. I looked ahead, right? When I lost, I looked ahead, and I said, well, Jacksonville has more opportunities. Washington's last time you can use them. But I'm telling you, this is where at the beginning of the season, a lot of people try to do the projections, right? I'm going to project my team through every week right now, and it never works, ever. And I'll show you why. Here's an example. We have two good examples this year. First, take a look at Houston, a surprise team, right? They're really good. We didn't think they would be at the beginning of the year. Certainly, if you're projecting throughout the year at the beginning of the year, you wouldn't have used Houston once, probably. But you can see here in week 1, Baltimore is a 9.5-point favorite on them, and Baltimore smoked them. Denver was laying 3 to Vegas. And now week 13, Houston is a 3.5-point favorite over Denver, who's won 5 straight games. And if you think about it, remember when Denver was 1-5 at one point and Houston was kind of in and out? Now, don't you think we could use either of these teams for Survivor potentially down the road here? At the beginning of the year, you're probably thinking, I don't know if I'll use either one of those teams. Cincinnati, major injury to the quarterback. Happened last year. Rams, Super Bowl winners. Last year, Stafford goes down. Nobody's using the Rams the rest of the year. This year, it's Cincinnati now. Are we going to use them the rest of the year? Look at that. Cincinnati, 1-point favorite at Cleveland. Most of us were projecting the Bengals, certainly to be in the playoffs, probably the AFC Conference Championship game, maybe even Super Bowl, right? Then Jacksonville was given 3.5 to Indiana. We all thought Jacksonville would win their division, but now Jacksonville's an 8.5-point favorite over Cincy. I mean, in this game, at the beginning of the year, you probably or maybe were projecting Jacksonville as a slight favorite, if at all. So you can see how things change, and this is why I say with Survivor, just adapt and go with it. The teams at the beginning of the year who look strong are not necessarily the ones in the middle and not necessarily the ones at the end of the year. So anyways, here we go. Hey, one thing with our plays last week, the betting public loves favorites and overs. And last week, favorites went nuts. They went 12-4, almost 13-3. Overs were 9-7, which is one of the best weekends they've had this year in this 60% year of unders, right? So Vegas said, yeah, the betting public had a great week last week, but then look what happened to us. Oh my gosh, our top 5, 1-4, our worst week of the season. And you could see, like Baltimore, I don't know what happened, right? They've averaged over 30 points a game in the last 5 games, and then they come in against the Chargers' terrible defense, and they can't barely get to 20. Chicago, Minnesota over, not even close. Chicago's defense, Eberflus is a defensive coach, so it's about time we're really seeing the Chicago defense. They're coming into their own. They're now the number 1 rushing defense in football, and they look really good Monday night. So, Bears are coming around. San Francisco is our only winner. That was a Thursday night Thanksgiving play. Thanksgiving special, the 3-team teaser, just bombed thanks to Detroit. We gave you the numbers. Detroit's like 5-17 on Thanksgiving Day, the last 22. They stink. So you're thinking, you got a good team now against an arch rival. You're going to come in and play well and kick their butt. And what do? They stunk. Jared Goff, maybe his worst game as a Detroit Lion. He just kept committing turnovers every other play in the first half, and they could just never get it back. Now, we did pretty good on our player props. You'll see that on the next page, too. Derrick Henry hit his number like we thought he would, but Tennessee, of course, 17 points the first half. They don't score anything in the second half. I thought I had that one for sure, right? I'm already counting my money. Oh, well. David Montgomery hit his over in rush yard. And Keaton Mitchell, rushing, receiving over, did hit. He did have a coming out game. He even started. So, now, and the other stuff I was looking in on, The big one I hit was the Dallas team total over because I took it at the regular level, and then I told you I was going to tease it up. I teased it all the way up to 34.5, getting plus 190 money, and it blew through. Dallas averaging 41 points a game at home this year, and we're going to be playing them again this week. Same sort of way. The Thanksgiving Thursday night game, you've seen it in the past, favorite to like, I think 12-4 straight up, or 13-3 straight up, and 12-4 against the spread. And then away favorites 5-1 straight up, 5-1 against the spread, and San Francisco did us proud. They went in and romped, favorite wins on the road. And those games are blowouts by more than 10 points. They won by more than 10 points. The only thing that didn't hit was the under. The under is like 12-4-1 or something like that, but it pushed. It was at 44, and it hit 44, unfortunately. But you can see on this side the player props. And this is where we're doing pretty well. Michael Pittman goes over. Pacheco doesn't because Kansas City gets behind. He has a great fantasy game, 2 touchdowns. I think he's had 50 rushing yards and a bunch of receiving yards, but he did not hit his individual rush total over. Diggs made it by 1 yard. Swift hit his. And that Houston-Jacksonville game, I told you I was going to be heavy into that. We took Ingram. We took Nico Collins. I took ATN's rush and receiving. He just missed by about 4 or 5 yards there. And then Stroud had another 300-yard day. He's been phenomenal. All right, let's get into the pool now. 1,791 entries, 49 remain, 29 more eliminated that last week. Almost 37% of the pool at that point gone. So we're down to 29 people left. You see the top win choices were Tennessee, Kansas City, and the others there. Top loss choices, Detroit. I mean, just a shocker. And then Minnesota absolutely stunk on Monday night. They were awful. All right, let's take a look at our key NFL survivor metrics real quick. Nothing big here, but the thing to note, the favorites were 12-4 last week. They blew it out. And like I said, betting public loves favorite and overs, and that was a good week for that. Thursday night, San Francisco wins, so we're 9-3. We're on 75% winners there, back on track. Top 5 survivor pool choices, though, only go 2 and 3. So we're only hitting 2/3 on those. That's not very good. Against the spread side, you can see, again, favorites had a great week, 12 and over. The over goes 9-7. The over was actually 9-5, and I took the Baltimore over. Loser, it goes under. Took the Chicago, Minnesota over. Loser. And they end up at 9-7, but still a good week for the overs. Let's check our schedule for week 13. We have a bunch of 6-point favorites again. 6 teams on bye. Now, this should be a really hard survivor week because 6 teams on bye, so you only have 12 games, 12 winners to pick. And we're deep in the season where you've already used 12 teams. So you've used 12 teams. You only have 12 winners coming. 6 people's on the sideline. Let's take a look real quick. We start off with Dallas. -9 Thursday night at home. They've been phenomenal at home. Chargers, 6-point favorite at New England. Pittsburgh, 5.5-point favorite with Arizona. Tampa Bay, 5.5-point favorite with Carolina. Jacksonville on Monday night, 8-point favorite with Cincinnati. Kansas City on Sunday night, 6.5-point favorite with Green Bay. And then Miami, a 9.5-point. They're the biggest one on the board this week, 9.5 points with Washington. All right, real quick, I'm going to show you something here. Here's our Survivor Chop Busters this year. What does this chart show? This shows the teams who have busted our chops the most in Survivor. They've knocked out the most teams. There's 2 columns. One is you picked that team and they lost for you. They stunk. The other is you picked against that team and they beat you and knocked you out. Houston is number 1. 320 times they've busted our chops this year. Jacksonville, Minnesota, you can see the rest. Seattle, Tampa Bay, of course, Washington knocked me out last week. Survivor Boomers, now these are teams we love because either we picked them and they won, or we picked against them and they did what you're supposed to do and lose. Now you can see Arizona has lost almost 1,200 times for us this year. They've been perfect. Giants are up there, Washington, of course, Chicago, Vegas, Buffalo, and Dallas. Real quick, I want to show you something here for player props. We've been doing pretty well on player props, and I'm giving you more and more each week, and I'll show you kind of what I look at, some things I use for DFS plays and things like that. Here's your teams giving up the most 100-yard receivers this year. Number 1, Tampa Bay, 9 of them. Houston had 3 in one game against them. And those are the teams who have had those games against them. But so I look at Tampa Bay and go, all right, what receiver is playing them that can do well this week? What does their over-under look like? And that's where I start looking for my player props. You can see those Giants, Jets, Jacksonville, and Washington are the worst giving up receiving yards. Washington plays Miami this week. I'm going to tell you right now, Tyreek Hill will be on it. The ones who have given up the least are Dallas and Chicago at this point. Here's your top players with 100-yard games. Tyreek Hill, AJ, the Browns. What can Brown do for you? And the teams and how they've done. In terms of rushing yards, Arizona's given up the most. So every time I see Arizona, I'm like, okay, Let's go find a running back against them. Denver. Now, all of Denver's came early in the year, okay? So be careful there. None of theirs have been late here. 5 teams have given up 300-yard games, and there's 7 teams who have not given up a 100-yard rusher this year, including the Bears. The most 100-yard rushing games, Christian McCaffrey leads the way. The other 3, Kyron Williams, Devin Achane, David Montgomery, these are guys that have had injuries and have been out a few weeks as well. So they could have done better. 300-yard passers. Washington's given up the most. Guess who they play? Miami, the number 1 passing offense in football. Jacksonville, the Chargers, Philly, and Tampa Bay all up there. The ones who have done it the least, they've given up 0 300-yard passers. You can see Baltimore, Carolina, KC, New Orleans, and the Jets. C.J. Stroud leads the way. Sam Howell, Derek Carr. You'll notice a lot of them are players who are in comeback situations, right? They're losing, and they're just chucking it in the third, fourth quarter. All right, let's get into it. Our in-play options for Survivor this week with playoff teams. You can see we got 5 of them. So despite having a limited slate, we actually have a pretty good group to pick from this week, even if you've used a bunch of these teams. I imagine you have one of these teams available. Number 1, Dallas, and it's obvious. Look at them, 13-1 at home, average 41 points a game at home this year. Dak's been sensational. Seattle gives up a lot of points. You can see there, Seattle's given up, when you take the Giant game out, I think they shut the Giants out on the road, but if you remove that game, and the Giants are the lowest scoring team in football, right? They're giving up 25 points a game on the road. They've given up 30 to the Rams, Detroit, San Francisco, and Baltimore. Clearly, Dallas has an offense that's on the equal to them. I mean, they're basically the number 1 offense in football in terms of scoring. Is Seattle, even though they have a winning record, they've lost to teams like Rams, San Francisco, Baltimore, Cincinnati by an average of 15 points a game. Dallas is right in that group. What I'm saying is I think Dallas wins this game by 15 or so. They're going to have their 30-point game. And so when I do that, my best play is going to be kind of what I did last week, where I take the Dallas team total over. You can see at 27.5, I think it's minus 112 or something. And then I'm going to tease it up to like 30.5 and get plus 145. So maybe I do the first one at 100, the second one at 60, and then I'm going to tease it all the way up to 34.5 at plus 220 money for, say, 30. And if you hit them all, great. You could do it all the plus 220 at 34.5, but that's a riskier play, right? With the way I'm doing it, if Dallas at least gets 28, which I think they should, I'm going to win and I'm not going to lose money. A little less risky, but that's kind of what I'm thinking here. All right, Washington, Miami. I'm going to do the same thing with Miami. Their team total over is 29.5. Washington, you can see number 32 defense, or 29. Terrible against the pass. Miami, number 1 pass offense. Tyreek Hill is about 650 yards away from breaking the all-time receiving yards record, which is owned by Megatron Calvin Johnson from Detroit. And Miami's got some tough games coming up, some tough defenses. The Jets, I think they got to play Buffalo once more. There's some decent teams on the schedule. This is against a team that Tyreek Hill can go nuts against. And so I think he's going to go nuts. I can easily see him getting 120, 150, even 200 yards this game. Sort of padding himself so he doesn't have to get those big 100-yard games against those tougher defenses. Now, I know he has an ankle, but I think he'll play. And last week, I think he only played about 60% of the plays. He's still at 100 yards. I think he's in for a big game. Tua's in for a big game. Miami's in for a big game. That's just my thought. So I like that Miami over. I like Tyreek Hill's over. You can see if you tease Miami up to 34.5, it's plus 195 money. Love that. Sam Howell's your number 1 quarterback in terms of passing yards, but he also has the most interceptions, and he also gets sacked second most of anybody. So can he avoid sacks and turnovers? Otherwise, look for this to be a blowout. Number 3, Green Bay and Kansas City. Chiefs are 4-1 in away games. And, they're starting to come around. Now, Green Bay's won 3 of 4 over some good teams. The Rams, the Chargers, and Detroit. Those are pretty good football teams. And Green Bay's offense now, they've averaged 390 yards a game in the recent games. That's on par with like a top 5 offense. So Jordan Love's starting to come around. Jaden Reed is showing he's their best receiver, the rookie. Christian Watson is finally feeling some pressure, like, man, I'm not pulling my weight. He has a good game last week. Dobbs has been very good. And the other rookie, Wicks, has been pretty good. Luke Musgrave's been pretty good, the rookie. So I think Green Bay's offense is starting to come around a bit and will play better. The issue is Kansas City's defense is freaking good. They're a top 5 defense. And so I like the Chiefs. Now think of the Chiefs. Earlier this year, they struggle with their receivers, but now you're starting to see, you've got Kelsey, obviously. Rashee Rice looks solid, and Holmes looks like he trusts him. He had a 100-yard game last week. And now he's throwing to Justin Watson 6-8 targets a week. It seems like Mahomes trusts him. I don't think Watson is that great of a receiver. He's not as good as some other players, but he's good enough. The other guys, I don't think you can trust, but at least he's got this core group with Pacheco and McKinnon, and it looks like the Chiefs' offense is starting to come around. Both these teams are top 10 in score defense, and so I would probably go back to the well and play the under in this game, just like I told you, KC Vegas under. But, we'll see. The key here, Kansas City rushing game against Green Bay's number 27 rush defense. I'm going back to the Pacheco rush over again. This time, Kansas City just get a lead, and we should get it. Game 4, Cincinnati, Jacksonville. Man, I never thought I'd have Jacksonville's in play against the Bengals, but here we are. And you wonder if Cincinnati's kind of throwing in the towel. I mean, Jake Browning, you have expectations at the beginning of the year, all your team. You're going to the Super Bowl. You're at least getting the conference championship game. You're definitely getting the playoffs. And right now, Cincinnati's on the outside looking in. And they have a horrible division and conference record, which are tiebreakers. Cincinnati's not making the playoffs. Jacksonville, in the meantime, needs to keep winning. They're winning the AFC South. They got a great record. They're playing well. They're at home. They've been scoring like crazy. They've won 6 of 7. I think they're going to come in here and whoop up on Cincinnati this game. Remember when Cincinnati was hot, right? They had that 4-game winning streak when their defense caught fire. They were playing great. They were shutting down teams like Buffalo and San Francisco. But now in the last 3, look at them again, giving up 27 a game, over 400 yards of offense, well over. I like Jacksonville. I like ATN to get his rushing receiving total this week. Cincinnati's terrible against the tight end. I like Ingram to get his receiving over here. Jacksonville should roll. Game number 5. Here's the game I'm probably using for Survivor. In the pools I'm still in, and then I would have in this pool is Pittsburgh at home against Arizona. Now, Pittsburgh finally has over 400 yards in offense for the first time in like 3 years. Unbelievable. And now you get Arizona coming in, who does not have a very good defense. You can see the rush defense is 30th. They've given up the most 100-yard rushers in the league this year. And it seems like Pittsburgh has got the offense in gear a little bit. Freiermuth's back. He's a very good tight end. The running game went well last week with Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. We'll probably look at both those guys for their rushing overs this week. They're the number 1 team in turnover margin. Their score defense only gives up 17 a game. Arizona is 31st, giving up almost 27 a game. Even though Pittsburgh and Seattle, they're the only 2 teams in the NFL who have scored less points than they've given up with winning records, which is a bad recipe for success. I think Pittsburgh could get an absolute blowout get-right game here. Arizona's coming in from the hot sun into a cold, climate, and Pittsburgh hits hard on defense. Those hurt more when it's cold. I think Pittsburgh romps here. Here's our in-play options for non-playoff teams. We've got 2 of them, Tampa Bay and the Chargers. Tampa Bay started off the year great, and then they've lost a bunch in a row here, but now they come home against Carolina. And I expect Tampa Bay to get it right. Baker Mayfield's been playing really well. He doesn't get sacked. He's not turning the ball over. But Carolina, they've won 1 game. They've lost a couple by 3 points. And then they've lost every other game by 7 or more. So I like Tampa Bay minus the 5.5. Rashad White has played pretty well lately. I think he finally gets his over in rushing yards. We showed you the stat. Tampa Bay has given up the most 100-yard receivers this year. I like Thielen getting his over for Carolina. Now, one thing you can look at is Jonathan Mingo has been getting 6-7 targets a week lately. Take a look at his. We'll take a look at his number too. It might be low, and maybe that's the play to go instead. But I love Tampa Bay this week. Chargers, New England. Now, New England just can't score. They've been awful. Chargers have number 32 defense, number 32 pass defense. If New England can't score against Chargers, they can't score against anybody. And it's just over. Chargers still have a great offense. They played Baltimore last week. It was a great number 2 defense, and they didn't do well. But I expect the Chargers to bounce back this week and at least win. If they lose this, they're definitely out of the playoffs. They're hanging by a thread on the outside anyways, but they've got to win this one. I don't really have a best play here. Actually, here's something I would look at. New England, take a look here. New England's gone over 40 points in a game with Miami, Buffalo, Dallas, and Philly. 5 good offenses. The Chargers have gone over 40 total points 8 times this year. Chargers have a good offense. I think New England could score some points this game, and then the Chargers will score enough to get this thing over its total, which I think is 39.5 right now, as I recall. So that might be a play, is to take this game over. I know that's dicey because New England can't score. Here's your maybes. New Orleans and Detroit. Both these teams stunk last week. Absolutely stunk. Detroit, though, after their 2 losses this year, have won by 12 and 14 points. I think they'll bounce back and get a win here. New Orleans, after shutting out New England 34-0, they've given up 20, 31, 27, 17, 27, 24. They've lost 4 of 6. I think their defense is just falling apart a little bit. And you can see Detroit is one of the best offenses in the league. It's well balanced. The key is Detroit's number 5 rush offense against New Orleans' 23 rush defense. I think David Montgomery goes over in his rush yards again. I like that. Detroit's going to win this game. They're going to bounce back and get this one. Jets and Atlanta. I like the Jets, but they just can't score. And I don't know if Boyle's the answer at all. Garrett Wilson had a decent game last game, but both these teams have good defense, as you can see there. The issue is the Jets are 31st in rush defense. Atlanta brings a weird rushing attack between Bijan, Cordell Patterson, and Algier. 3 different styles. Then you add in Desmond Ridder, who can run a little bit. Atlanta has a really good running game, and I think they'll take advantage of the Jets here and probably pull out a victory. They're absolutely in the NFC South playoff hunt. They're tied with the Saints for first place right now. Actually, I think they have the tiebreaker, so they're winning. So they really have something to play for. The Jets, if they can win this and get Aaron Rodgers back, have a shot at the playoffs, but otherwise not playing for much. We'll take a look at those rushing overs for the Atlanta guys here. Risky plays, 4 games, starting with the biggest one, San Francisco, Philly. Oh my God, this is the biggest game of the year, right? And I can't believe San Francisco's going into Philly as a 3-point favorite, which basically means if they were playing in San Francisco, they'd probably be favored by 5 or 6. I don't see that. Now, I get it. San Francisco, we've talked about this, undefeated with Deebo Samuel, averaged 33 points a game with him, only like 17 without him, don't win without him. But Philly has shown the last couple of weeks are just the best team in football. They've beaten Dallas, they beat the Chiefs, come back and beat Buffalo. Remember when I said I thought Philly was in a potential letdown situation? They come off a huge rivalry victory over the Chiefs, and they got behind Buffalo. Buffalo should have won the game. But Hurts brings them back. A great win for Philly. Unbelievable. And now this week, I know Philly will be up for this game. I'm taking Philly plus the 3 at home. I just think they're the best team in the league right now. Also, look at Brandon Ayuk over. Philly's pass defense struggles. They give up a lot of yards. They really, their defensive line gets after it, and they're going to have to pressure Purdy. That'll be the difference in the game here if they can get after Purdy and pressure him. Because if they don't, they give up a ton of yards. The key might be who can get a lead. Because when these teams get leads, they don't give them up. It's going to be a great game. I'm excited to watch it. Denver at Houston on the Riskies. These 2 teams are on fire. Denver has won 5 in a row since going 1-5. That defense is on fire. Houston's playing great football. Their offense is clicking. So this is going to be a great game. Both of them are 6-5, tied with Indy for the last playoff spot in the AFC. So it's a must-win. This is a huge game. Denver was giving up 36 points a game the first 5 games of the year, only giving up 16.5 the last 6. Houston, they've won 4 of 6. They have the number 2 pass offense in the NFL, and they've been getting it done. But I want you to know, the OU is currently 47.5. And surprisingly, Houston's only been over this 4 times this year. Denver, they were over this total early in the year, but the last 6 games have not even come close. I like the under this game. That's my favorite play there. Cleveland at the Rams. Cleveland, I just feel so sorry for them, And DTR is a rookie, thrown in a tough spot. Such a good defense, but when your defense is on the field, because your offense isn't scoring at all, eventually you break down and you get beat, and that's what happened last week, and I fear that's going to happen more and more here towards the end of the year. The Rams now are healthy. Stafford's back. Kyron Williams is back. Kupp is back. Pukanuka. What's interesting is I think, there's a perfect example. The beginning of the year, we weren't sure about the Rams. Now, I think there's going to be a game where you can absolutely use the Rams in Survivor coming up. Potentially this one. I don't trust it quite yet because Cleveland's defense is that good. And I'm a little biased towards Cleveland, but I could see people choosing the Rams this week. But I think there are going to be other options for the Rams down the road here. In the meantime, I like the Rams to win this game, really. It's -3.5. I would probably tease it down to 2.5, though, just to be safe. And then finally, you've got Indianapolis at Tennessee. We've talked about this all year. Tennessee's 4-0 at home, averaged 25 points a game. Of course, last week, they hit 17 in the first half and can't do anything the second half. What the heck? You know, they're 0-6 on the road, averaging 12 at home. It's a whole different world. Indy is 3-1 in away games, averaging 25 points a game. Indy's been over 20 every game this year except the one in Europe. So I expect them to score some points here and not have a problem doing it. Derrick Henry, career-wise, he's got 7 100-yard games against Indy, averaging 5 yards a carry. He's made a career out of playing Indy. And I think he'll do okay. I'm going to go back to the well with the Derrick Henry rushing over here. I think Tennessee will score more against Indy than they did against Carolina. Carolina's got a pretty good defense, especially against the pass. Indianapolis gives up more, and so I think Tennessee can score here, but I guarantee Indy's going to score over 20 again. So I like this game to go over, like Derrick Henry. Jonathan Taylor, if he doesn't play, and he should be out, he's doubtful right now because he's got a thumb issue. I think he's having surgery on it. Most likely will not play this week. So if it's Zach Moss only, I'll definitely take a look at Zach Moss rushing over. He's been pretty good, and his number should be relatively low because whenever they have a backup come in, it doesn't get exaggerated. It's usually pretty decent. It's okay. So that's something I absolutely look at there. Here's what I'm looking at, the primary pool this week. We're going to take the Pittsburgh Steelers in advance in our big pool. I'm probably taking Pittsburgh in all my other survivor pools too, which are much lower in terms of, numbers. So this is the one I still focus on. Here's what we're looking for in our top 5 picks for week 13. We got to get back on track. I'm going to go with that Dallas team total over 27.5. I'm also going to tease it up, like I said, to 30.5. I'm going to tease it up to 34.5 and see how we do there. Get that plus money, and hopefully Dallas does what Dallas does at home. Score 41 points a game. Miami, I'm going to do the same thing there. They're playing Washington, who just gave up 45. I think as long as Tyreek Hill says he's healthy and can play, this is going to be a huge Tua Tyreek game. They don't have to force it to him, and they should do pretty well. Take the Miami team total over 29.5. Tyreek's over receiving yards. We talked about this. Taking Najee Harris probably and Jaylen Warren rushing overs against Arizona. Arizona gives it the most 100-yard rushers in the league. Tampa Bay minus 5.5 against Carolina. Carolina loses by 7 or more to everybody, it seems. Tampa Bay's coming home and needs a victory. Mayfield's playing good. Evans should do fine. I like him in this game. Rashad White should have a good game. We'll look at his total. Bonus side, I'm going to take Philly in the 3. I just think you're 10-1. You're like 26-1, Jalen Hurts, in the regular season. And you're at home, and you've just beaten 2 really solid teams. I'm taking Philly over San Francisco. I'm going to go back to well with Tennessee team total. I'm going to take the Indy team total over at plus 100. I like that. David Montgomery over his number, rushing yards. I'm going to take Thielen and maybe Jonathan Mingo over the receiving yards. Again, I don't get these numbers yet, so I'm guessing, but I'm guessing kind of what I think will fit. Take Zach Moss over his rushing yards. Evan Ingram over his receiving yards. We said Cincinnati's one of the worst against tight ends. And I'm going back to well Pacheco over rushing yards. Green Bay is 27th against the rush. I think the Chiefs get a lead this time, and then Pacheco should do it this week. If they get behind and he doesn't do it again, what do they call that? Insanity, right? You do the same thing over and over. Anyways, guys, hey, we're picking Pittsburgh in the primary poll. We appreciate you being here. Thanks a lot for our sponsor, CooperGroup.com. Check out their baseball bats, drumsticks, golf grips. Please like us and subscribe to us. This has been Picking Winners with the Cheezeman. Week number 13, NFL Survivor. Good luck. I hope you survive.